So as you can see by my last video, I kind of like the Call of Duty franchise. I know they're basically the same game every year, and up until recently they were always really polished and had a lot of content. I do like other shooters a lot more though, with Doom Eternal, Half-Life 2 and Bioshock all being some of my most memorable gaming experiences. Although there's a specific game which kind of made me re-evaluate how FPS games can be approached, and that's Swat 4. I only discovered this game around 2018, and damn do the graphics not hold up. But that really doesn't matter, as it brought me some of the most intense moments the entire time I've played games. The story of this game really doesn't matter. All you need to know is that you're the captain of a 5-man SWAT team, and every mission has you going into a new location to save hostages, arrest and possibly kill the criminals, and get out of there. What may sound rather simple and bland on the surface is elevated by the incredible gameplay. Gunfights are fast and visceral, with you being able to be killed just as fast as you can kill the enemies. We get a wide variety of equipment that's not only useful in helping us with our mission, but also deeply immerses us into the game. Checking under doors with an opti wand, blocking a door with a wedge, and tasering an uncompliant civilian are just a few of the things this game introduces to really put you in the boots of this SWAT team. I don't think I've ever played a game which makes you feel this vulnerable when just approaching a door. This video isn't about SWAT 4 though, as you can see by the title, but rather its unofficial early access adopted brother, Ready or Not. This game has only come to my attention recently, and is being developed by a team known as Void Interactive. They were originally working with Team 17 to publish the game, who've worked on games like Worms, Overcooked and The Escapists. However, they ended up parting ways for an unknown reason, with many people speculating it was to do with how gritty and realistic Void want their game to be. So from that alone, I was instantly intrigued. It seems that at some point down the road, the plans this team have may land them in hot water, and I like to see people staying true to their vision and not backing down from confrontation. But what we also have to remember is that this game is also early access, which in the past has been a big problem for lots of games. Getting into the game, you can choose to either play single player, create an online session, or join someone else's, with the join function in this game being one of the best I've ever seen. It's incredibly fast, with barely any loading, so it seems that despite this game finding a large player base, they've prepared the servers adequately. We always start off in the headquarters, where we can gear up, select a mission and start it. From the gear alone, we can see this game is staying very true to everything that SWAT 4 brought to the table. We have the opti wand, gas grenades, stingers, and all that kind of stuff. It would have been nice to see some evolution here, but I guess new things will be added down the road. They do add some new body and head equipment though, letting you choose between no, light and heavy armor, as well as giving you a variety of headgear to wear, like night vision goggles, anti-flash goggles, and ballistic headgear. These are good, coming with their own positives and drawbacks. For example, if you don't use the night vision goggles, you'll almost definitely need a flash on your weapons, and not choosing the ballistic headgear definitely makes you more vulnerable to headshots. Just like in SWAT, you can also customize the gear of all 4 teammates, luckily with a larger amount of weapons to choose from. Obviously, SWAT 4 had mods which gave us access to numerous amounts of weapons, but from the base game, Ready or Not has a lot more to offer. All the weapons look incredibly realistic, with quite a few assault rifles and some shotguns and SMGs. I'm not entirely sure on how all these weapons separately function, although I kind of like that. If there were weapons that were objectively better, I think it would dampen the gameplay, as you'll always want the best weapon. This is what destroys Call of Duty's multiplayer for me personally, as there's rarely been a version where there isn't at least one extremely overpowered weapon. In this game, you can pretty much choose whatever weapon you think's the coolest and go with that. Shotguns obviously have slightly less range, and some are pump action, and SMGs are primarily for close encounters, but that's about it. Something that both interested me but confused me is where you can modify your weapons. This simply means putting on some attachments, like scopes and grips, assumedly to make these weapons easier to use. The only thing is though, you can tell this is basically just an idea that they've thrown into the game. There's nothing which tells you how these attachments affect aspects like range or recoil. There's only a short number of attachments to even pick, and there's even some that don't even have icons, just a blank white box. I'm glad this is here, as these attachments do make your guns look even cooler, and the scopes, flashlights and laser pointers do actively make your gun a bit more functionable. But again, this just needs to be fleshed out a bit more. It may sound obvious when I say that, and some people might use early access as an excuse. However, I believe that no matter what stage your game's at, if you're selling it for £30, it needs to be fully functional. Just look at Cyberpunk. That game technically had all the elements it advertised, but they were pretty much all horribly implemented and buggy when the game came out. We can also customize our appearance, which barely matters considering you're in first person, as well as doing some training exercises around the headquarters. Only thing is, these don't seem fleshed out either. When you go to a gun range in a game, you usually expect some sort of hit the targets minigame, but here you literally just get to shoot random things for as long as you want. And there's even a short training area you can run through, but once again has no kind of minigame attached. You can also find a civilian and practice restraining, which is literally just pressing F. You can also kill them without any repercussions. So, actually heading into the missions is where we can really experience the game. There's 8 levels to choose from, 2 of which are test levels, which I have no idea why they're included. I don't think it really matters what map you're playing on, as the core gameplay will always play out the same, and that goes for SWAT 4 as well. We can see when selecting a mission, there's now a variety of modes to choose from, with barricaded suspects being the standard mode, where you need to save hostages with strict rules of engagement, raid, which is basically the same but with looser rules of engagement, active shooter, which makes you take down targets as fast as possible as they go round and kill civilians, bomb threat, which is the same but with some bombs you need to defuse, and hostage rescue, which is the same but with all the hostages in a single room, which will be killed if you get discovered. As you can probably tell, I don't think these modes are very fleshed out either. The game didn't really need all these modes, but as they're here, I can appreciate them. However, if they're all basically going to be the same as the standard mode with just a little twist, I don't know if it's worth it. They're described pretty different to how they actually function as well, with active shooter making you think there'll be one enemy, despite there usually being multiple, and hostage rescue is literally just most of the enemies and hostages packed into one room. Thing is, these modes aren't available on every map, and in fact, most maps only let you do the standard barricaded suspects mode. That's fine, but as I said, if it's not ready yet, don't put it in. You're actively making people feel like they're missing out on something, as opposed to if it just wasn't there until it was complete. So, let's talk about the gameplay, which is just as, and I think in my opinion, even more engaging and intense than SWAT 4. You once again have your squad, which you can order to do things like follow you, stack up on a door, breach and clear, and restrain suspects. In a game like this, I feel the graphical fidelity and sound design really is important in immersing you into the world. The graphics are stunning. Honest to God, one of the best looking games I've played in a while. I particularly love their use of striking colours, like this red section at the back of the gas station, as well as the way all the lights reflect. I personally believe if your game has good lighting, it will ultimately stand the test of time, even in comparison to high resolution 4K textures. They do occasionally stumble in relation to some of the objects and character models, especially some of the civilians, but overall they're pretty great. On top of this, the game runs incredibly smoothly, with my PC not even being top of the line anymore, and the sound design is great as well. All the weapons sound incredibly punchy, and the cacophony of noise that's created upon you breaching a door and taking out targets really ramps up the intensity.
On the move!
Drop.
Hands up! Drop to your knees! Hands up!
Go fuck you!
Hands up! Put your hands
Get
up!
your hands up!
Movies. Nice guns.
There's also a constant soundtrack playing in the background, which I actually kind of liked. It sort of takes away from the grounded nature of everything, having this non-diegetic orchestra playing to your actions. But it also kind of reminded me of COD 4, and that's fine by me. You can always turn it off as well if you find it distracting, but the way it ramps up when you engage in combat is really exciting. I found commanding my team a lot easier this time round, making everything clearer. You can see in the bottom right all of your team's names, what they're doing, as well as your next order. It's a very smart decision to label the Z beside it, telling us instantly that to make your team fall in, all you need to do is press Z. Clicking the middle mouse button brings up a list of orders, which you'll need to access primarily when figuring out how to tackle a door. You can even press the T button to check each of your team's helmet cams, which is an incredibly cool and intuitive function. Sometimes stacking up and peeking under doors with your Opti wand is just as intense as the actual gunfights. There's times where your heart will start racing when you realise you're about to breach a room with enemies and civilians in, meaning you'll have to pay attention to where you're shooting. You can also operate both blue and red squads separately, queuing up a command, and perhaps bursting into a room from two angles. I remember being able to do this in SWAT 4, but here it's a lot simpler, although I found it was rarely useful, at least for now, as not as many enemies are packed into these rooms. The gunplay is drastically improved. I think everything about the gunplay feeds into this idea of your vulnerability. You can barely shoot straight even when slightly moving. The amount of recoil that's given off is usually huge, but in exchange for that, 1 or 2 shots will put someone down in a split second. This links to your role as the captain. I really like being in charge and having control of my squad, but at the same time, I also like how everything can fall apart really quickly if you're not prepared for the engagements. And you do have to be prepared. If you wander into these casually, you are going to get killed, or get one of your team killed. Slowly peeking round corners and bursting into locked rooms honestly is some of the most intense, heart-pumping gameplay I've experienced in a while. Remember, just because this is simple doesn't make it any less engaging. You also want to take your time when entering rooms, as it's not only the enemies that can kill you, but also the traps which they can set up. These range from flashbangs to explosives, and won't necessarily mean you die, but will deduct points from your score. The score works exactly the same as SWAT 4, but instead of unlocking anything new when getting a certain grade, you just get it and that's it. It's fine and doesn't affect replayability for me personally, but I can understand if people would want something for their efforts. Sadly, this is where the criticisms come in, and unfortunately they're quite big ones. Despite this being one of the most gripping games I've played in a while, it's also one of the buggiest. And as I said, early access technically can explain it, but it can't explain a 30 quid price tag, when games like Undertale were only 7. The first and biggest problem you'll experience is the god-awful AI. I think it's worse than Cyberpunk, and strangely, some of it seems kind of intentional. The enemies for the most part are fine, with them spotting you and trying to kill you straight away, but your squad and the civilians can occasionally be fucking awful, not only completely destroying any immersion you might have had, but also just being a nuisance. Civilians will oftentimes try run away when you try to stop them, which is of course unrealistic, but also just really annoying. Civies in SWAT 4 would sometimes resist arrest, but they'd simply just stand there until you either pepper spray them or taser them. Pepper spraying them in this game just slows them down, which is so dumb. I don't know why they made civilians run away. They literally feel safer with the criminals than us. And I doubt this is some kind of social commentary, although that would be funny. In specific levels as well, your team can completely break. There's been several occasions where my squad has just gotten completely stuck and won't move for the rest of the level. There's also times where you'll try to bust open a door and flashbang and they just won't throw a flashbang. There's also a weird thing where you sometimes can't kick down doors but hilariously can open them. And there's also several occasions where objects will be flickering for seemingly no reason. Doors simply won't open when breaching, and a bunch of stuff that can be really annoying. I feel the primary draw of this game is the realism, and judging by the game's website, is also what they seem to be going for. These problems can completely destroy the experience, which is a shame, because when it's working properly, it's led to me being the most engaged I've been to a game in a very long time. People seem to enjoy the multiplayer with this game as well, which is great, but my experiences have been very mixed. I don't doubt this is partly down to my trolling nature when playing any online game.
But small willy.
No, I have big willy. Well, Tiny Willy.
But most people seem to not talk and just rush in by themselves. Games like this lend very well to a coordinated team of friends, and I'm sure those who've tried have had a lot of fun. But I'm just warning that if you're buying this game by yourself, the multiplayer might be a bit underwhelming. Finally, the maps are all fun and quite varied. I especially love the one at Port Hoken, with this being the only map with rain. As I said, most of these don't have all the game modes yet, but these will be gradually added over time. They're all designed well, and feature lots of areas that will make your heart pump. This game really is all about the replay value, with the payoff being that you learn the maps a lot better, and get a higher score next time you play. They might be a bit confusing at first, but you'll get to know them intricately the more you play, as most of them aren't very big. I don't really like how you complete these objectives though. SWAT 4 was exactly the same, where you had to literally tick off everything until you can complete the level. This means you need to find some random obscure files, or report one of the dozen civilians you might have forgotten, which was always just annoying for me, because most times it just meant you were wandering around this level with no more enemies or civilians to restrain. A final thing I want to say about the maps is that in comparison to SWAT 4, they don't have as much personality. I of course love the design and visuals of them all, but in terms of interesting and unique encounters, we don't really have any yet. I can always remember things like the creepy guy who lives with his mum keeping a girl hostage. Just little additions like that would go a long way in spicing up some of these encounters. In conclusion, Ready or Not is a brilliant start from Void Interactive, taking elements from the previous SWAT games and actually evolving, streamlining, and refining them for a new generation. The graphics and sound design are already incredible, and the gunplay is very fun and gripping, although there's unignorable bugs and glitches which do heavily draw back from the experience on occasion. With this being an early access game, it's inevitable that over time, new maps, modes, and guns will most likely be introduced, and I'm excited to see what new developments they bring. But I do also believe that if they don't fix these glaring issues fairly rapidly, they'll end up losing a large part of their player base. So ideally, that's their priority for now. Anyways, that's the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you know whenever I upload. Like the video, share to someone you know, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.